Hey, welcome back to the Motorcyclist Podcast, where we talk about motorcycles and what makes them great. Topics on the show always change, but the one thing that always remains is two wheels fun. I'm Justin Dawes, executive editor. We've got editor Adam Wahid, and we've got photo director Jeff Allen. Today, we are going to talk about BMW's Big Boxer GS. We're going to talk about the history of what can be argued as the OG adventure bike, the original adventure bike that kicked off a craze that's going on for 45 years strong at this point. We're going to talk about why it's always been kind of the gold standard of adventure bikes, what makes it so good, what we like about it, and so let's get into it. Let's start with some history. I guess I'll be a historian on this episode, as we usually kind of share the duties, but I'll tackle this one since I'm very familiar with the GS, as we all are. We've all ridden lots of GSs and fallen off of GSs and jumped GSs and done all kinds of things. So, so let's start off with in 78, 79, BMW employees started taking the Boxer out of the R80 and turning it into a dirt bike. They were kind of trying to build their own dirt wagon for things like the 6 days. And once the bosses saw that thing, they decided to make it a production motorcycle. So 1980 was the first year of the R80 G/S, GS, we call it now. And GS stands for Gelände Straße. I'm probably butchering that. Germans, I'm very sorry. That's as close as I can get with my limited German.
Did you come across it? That originally it was called the Gentleman Scrambler.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the OG, it was Gentleman Scrambler, but now it stands for Gelände Straße, which is woods and street. So they both, in the beginning, Gentleman Scrambler absolutely made sense because the R80 GS was not a gigantic motorcycle, but it did have some of the things taken over from the street bike. Shaft drive, had a single-sided swing arm called the monolever, had the 787cc Boxer air-cooled pushrod motor, and it proved to be better than just a big dual sport. In fact, right off the get-go, they started entering it in Dakar, and it won in 81, 83, 84, and 85. So the 83, 84, 85 models actually ran a 1000cc motor, but it was still an R80 GS. So that is the impetus for every adventure bike you see these days almost. Sure, there were scramblers and there was bikes that could do both before that, but BMW tapped into something with the GS that has stood the test of time. So 87.
When would you say it became less of a scrambler and more of an adventure bike?
I would say we will get there.
Okay, all right. I'm anxious. I love this thing. So spoiler alert.
How about it became less of a scrambler and more of an adventure bike in 1987, second generation. It was now the R100 GS. It lost the slash, so it's just GS, not G/S. And it went to a 980cc engine, and then it got a pair lever rear swing arm, which is basically still a single-sided swing arm, but it got some bracing pair lever to a rod above the swing arm to keep things working better off-road. So that's kind of when it started to move away from more of a scrambler and more towards an adventure bike, street bike that worked well and all sorts of things. Then in 1994, it went to the R1100 GS, so much larger engine, 1085 cc's. It's the first incidence of the tail lever fork. So gone were normal telescopic forks that you would see on most motorcycles these days. And instead you had a A-arm coming off the front of the frame that connected to the fork assembly with a shock attached to the frame above it. So what that did was balance out the forces in braking and acceleration a little bit, kept the bike on a more stable plane with minimal dive when you were jamming on the brakes. So
It-
big change for BMW there.
Yeah. Also, the reason the bike got so wide,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like because you had to move they had to move the radiator. Well, I guess this was before radiators,
But the frame itself had to get wider.
Everything got wider.
You have this A-arm assembly instead of just a normal head tube going up at the bottom and down on part of the frame. You have the A-arm shot going up. So a lot more complicated. It started gaining weight. It started getting wider. It got bigger fairings. The 1100 got a 4-valve head rather than the 2-valve head of the R100 and the R80. Talking more power. In 99, it went to the 1150 GS, so 1140 cc's. And then in 2002 was the first GS Adventure model, which bigger tank, more capacity, more off-road ability. That was the first incidence of that bike. So it's crazy to think that it's been 23 years since the first GS Adventure.
Yeah. Did the first one get longer travel suspension?
I am not for sure about that.
Yeah.
But anyway, bigger tank, all the world traveler capabilities to basically go after whatever you wanted to at the time. 2004, we went to the R1200 GS, 1170 cc's. It got 60 pounds lighter than the previous model. And then 2005 was the GSA. And then in 2008, they added the ESA, electric suspension adjustment. So that was able to basically change up the rear shock and make it electronically adjustable. You could basically pick some modes that you were going to ride in, press the shock button on the handlebar, and it would change the modes of the shock. In 2013, the R1200 GS went to water cooled.
That was a big improvement. That motor had a lot, but that was a noticeable, very noticeable improvement. Yeah.
Huge change, more power, all that goodness of being able to more effectively manage the cooling, which allowed you to make more power. But some of the faithful didn't like it.
No, they did not.
It was short-lived, though. That the hate was short-lived.
It was one of those things that if you didn't like it, it's because you hadn't ridden it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, their arguments are, like it's going to take away the reliability and the fix anywhere ability of the GS. If it's a world traveler, if I've got radiators, what am I going to do if I pop a radiator? Well, there's a bajillion cars out there with radiators. I think almost any place in any country can figure out how to repair a radiator.
Yeah.
As long as you don't completely rip the thing off the bike.
Yeah.
You're going to be okay.
I really love the characteristic of that motor down low. It had like a snappy, torquey.
Air-cooled one?
Yeah. No, the water-cooled.
Water-cooled. The first water-cooled, yeah.
Yeah.
Very torquey off the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that ran till 2019, and then we got the R1250 GS, and that got variable valve timing, shift cam. So what did that allow to do? Make even more power, have better emissions, and we got increased capacity to 1254 cc's, and that engine is amazing. Has been amazing since it showed up. We're talking even more grunt, even more power. It just made the previous engine that much better. And now in 2024, we got the R1300 GS. Talking even more power, slimmer. It has variable valve timing. It's got the transmission mounted underneath the crankshaft, so it's shortened up the engine as well as lowered the center of gravity. You've got all that rotating mass sitting lower in the bike for better handling, and it's a kind of a redo of the GS philosophy in a way, because the GS kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and wider and taller to make it more of a travel bike. But the trend for adventure bikes in the last 10 years has been to also be very dirt capable, and they were starting to lose some of that ability in a way compared to the competition. So they upped the game. So now it's even better off-road. It's all over. They did a huge redesign, and it's really, really cool to see. And now in 2026 they have a throwback model, the R12 G/S. So it's a retro styled model based on the R12, which is they have an R12 Cruiser and a Roadster. It's using the R1200 GS engine, and it's just a kind of a cool throwback style adventure bike. It doesn't have a big fairing. It doesn't have. It's much more simple. It still has rider modes and all the great electronics, but it just looks like you're back in the early 80s, which is super cool. So
yeah, I haven't ridden that bike.
No one has. Hoyer's actually in Germany right now, probably riding it today. So it'd be cool.
But remember the R19 GS. I love that thing for like the nostalgia of it. And they went back to that the white and the blue and that sort of orangish red.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought that they could have gone a little further with that, with added some luggage and stuff like that, because that was really a pretty fun motorcycle.
I think that's what the R12 GS is doing. Like they've upped the suspension travel. You can get an enduro package. It has an 18-inch rear wheel. It's really upping the ante, I think, in a way that maybe those R9T GS fans wanted to see. So
yeah, I'm one of them.
It's very cool. Yeah, I think it's really cool too, and I want to do some cool projects with it, which hopefully we can figure something out in the future. Just to touch on it, I mean, that R80 GS, the R100, like it's from that popularity, it spawned a whole segment of GS models for BMW. We're only going to talk about the big boxers here, but you had a 650, you had a 750, an 800, 850, 900, a 310, and now you have a selection available, 310, 900, GS models that, so they run the gamut, and there's going to be a 450 GS coming out. So they're going to have, a tiered ecosystem for GSs, all based on the popularity of this big boxer. So, that's the history. Very truncated, very short. Our BMW GS friends are probably like, oh, they forgot about the nuance of this change here and that change here. And man, we're keeping it simple for the one, so we don't screw up, but two, to keep it light and keep it rolling. Otherwise, we could be here for a week just talking about GS changes, which I think it's valid because it's done so much and there's been so many changes, and BMW is constantly kind of refined and pushed that motorcycle. It's worth maybe a week-long conversation, but we're going to keep it to what we just did. So let's talk about why it's the king of ADVs. Adam, why do you let's touch on the why is it the measuring stick, the gold standard that all their adventure bikes are measured by?
Well, probably just because it's so capable in basically all conditions, on the street, off-road, 2-track fire road, even a little bit of, single and a half, single track. Like it's literally like the one bike that does everything. It just does everything. You can go anywhere on it. Every time I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and they're like, what bike would you buy right now? I'm like, R1300 GS Trophy Edition, and I'd put street tires on it. Like it does everything. Like it just, it's $30,000, but it fits so many roles. Yeah, you could buy, 2-3 motorcycles, but why when you can just buy one that just does everything, and it does everything just with great pedigree.
Yeah, the GS, you're kind of buying 2 or 3 motorcycles,
Yeah.
Like it really is a true all-rounder, like more than any motorcycle has ever been. I mean, you can do everything. It's a great touring bike, whether you're touring single or 2-up. I've ridden it off-road 2-up. That thing is fantastic. It's the original. Of course, they essentially created that segment, and they just continue to own it. Essentially, they've sold they've sold over 1 million GSs.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Justin?
Well, I think that you both have nailed it, that it does everything really well. On road, it's got great handling. Like it's so sure-footed in the corners, much more than it should be. Even on when it's got knobby tires on it, it just works. It doesn't care how you position your body in a corner. If you point it around a corner, it goes around the corner without a fuss. You know, it's comfortable. It's got tons of protection. It's got all the tech and all the touring features. Like when you're on the road, you're not left wanting much out of this motorcycle, right? And then you go to the dirt, and it's more capable than any 550 pound motorcycle should be. Like it is. You look at it and you're like, yeah, that thing that's gonna be a handful once it turns to dirt. You know, like gravel roads, it's unbelievable. It's super easy to ride.
Yeah.
And you just keep upping the ante, and it just gets better and better and better. And you can even ride single track if the track is wide enough for the cylinders to fit through, it'll go.
Yeah.
No deep ruts.
No deep ruts. Yeah.
You don't want to be splitting trees.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least you won't smash your toes. You'll take the cylinder head out first, but so it's a bit of protection, right? So I mean, there's so many things that it does great, and I think that is the reason why it is such a champion.
You have to respect the weight off road, but it's that's why I was such a fan of the 1250, the water cooled motor, is that I almost feel like it's like, it might be a slight exaggeration, but only slight, is like riding a 450. The way the motor is so grunty down below, like you were talking about, like on Jeep 2-track, you know, like on a big adventure bike crossing from one side, you know, in the track over to the other side, and that where the weeds grow and there's gravel in the middle, you can just like blip that thing and it just kind of hops over to the other side.
Yeah,
I agree. It's got that 450 cc single cylinder kind of character down low.
Yeah,
and the ergonomics are mighty dirt bike now in a positive way.
You stand up, it feels like a dirt bike. It's just heavy. It's like riding two 450s at the same time.
yeah.
Nice one, dude. That's a good one.
Yeah, 2.5 450s. Yeah, and I mean, your point is very valid about it. You have to respect the weight, but that's the same with every adventure bike. Like that's the thing about adventure bikes is they have a lot of weight behind them, which means they have a lot of momentum, and they make speed very quickly because of such powerful engines. And so it's easy to get yourself in trouble if you don't have a respect for the motorcycle. But if you're comfortable with it and you have a respect for it, man, you can do things on the GS that are just every time I get on it, it just blows me away. I'm just like, there's no way that I'm gonna go through that with this, and it just doesn't. You know,
especially if it gets a little technical. If you kind of picture yourself on a trials bike where you're not allowed to put your foot down, then you're that's how you have to think of it. It's just you can't put your foot down.
Like you guys said, that bike is capable of generating so much inertia and momentum, which is good. You want to use that momentum and inertia to your friend, but also when you have that inertia and momentum, you have to be aware that it's going to take you a little bit more time to slow that thing back down. So
absolutely,
it makes like dirt bike riding almost more of a game. It's like a different type of game, you know. It's really rewarding too when you tackle obstacles. So you're like, how am I going to do that? Then you do it on that bike. You're like, wow, you know.
And I think that's the point with it being, you know, in the technical stuff, especially with the new bike, the center of gravity with the Boxer engine, you know, the 2 cylinders sticking out the side, and then now the transmission below the engine or below the crankshaft. It's so easy to keep your feet on the foot pegs and balance the motorcycle. And the ergos are very dirt bikey now. They're very comfortable for standing up. Before you might be hunched over a little bit, and that you know made it a little difficult. But now it just feels right, and you can basically, you know, especially with its tight turning radius, like that bike at like ADV rallies on the little challenge Gymkhana courses they put up. Dude, that bike is the king because you can go really slow, you can turn really tight, and it's really stable while you're going slow, much more so than any other adventure motorcycle. So if you want to like be the king at the rally, that is absolutely the bike
in
you
the
want
skills
to have.
contest. Yeah.
In the skills contest.
The slow race, the GS is definitely the choice.
Yeah. There's nothing that can hang with the GS in a slow race. And that's once again because of that low center of gravity and the stability of the motorcycles.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like when I said it's like 2 or 3 motorcycles in one, it really is. Like you think of that motorcycle, and then I've ridden off-road in Baja, like hundreds of miles. And then at the same time, you're like, how is this the same bike you could do like 2-up weekend to like on the you can take like fast roads or even the freeway to San Francisco from Southern California, and it's all the same motorcycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there you go. That's the reason why it is the champ. And people will be like, oh man, like Jeff's talking about riding anything in Baja. Sure, but a KTM would be better because it's got more suspension travel and blah blah. Sure, in that one instance, there may be a bike that does one thing better than the BMW. But if you put them all, if you take them all as a whole and you measure all things, there's nothing that compares to a GS.
And I'm not going to totally agree with you. Like it does things like the big KTM. It does things as well.
But Dawes makes a good point. He does make a good point. Like you could pick one bike that that bike is going to be better for that certain little category, singular style.
Sure.
But it's you factor in just the versatility and just the touch points of the R1300 GS, like the character of the engine, the sound, the feel, the way it shifts gears, the suspension action, it everything it does is just so precise, and it makes riding very enjoyable. So maybe if it's not the very, very, very best, it certainly feels the very best because it has so much nice character, and it just makes riding very fun. Whenever I'm riding the GS, I'm having fun. Even at the freeway at 75 miles per hour, the sound of that Boxer twin, the visceral power pulses, it's just like, it just feels right.
And those miles disappear very quickly. Even the getting there miles on the freeway or whatever. Yeah.
And now they're loaded with all the creature comforts in the world. Not that they weren't before. It's almost like you're riding a Goldwing. You got your Bluetooth stereos and your heated everything and your adjustable windshield if you get the right option. It's a really luxurious ride.
Yeah, it can be, absolutely. And I think, when I was making the point of like, there's bikes that can do one thing better. Like, let's talk about like on the road, like a Multistrada V4S is the king of the corners in the adventure bike segment. A KTM 890 is probably the whoop wagon, right? Like you look at all these, but the GS is going to be in the top 2 or 3 in every segment that you talk about. Like it's going to be second or third in every place. It's never going to be out of the contention. So that's what it's consistency in ability to do all the things to 95% of the top in any category, and it wins. It just wins because of that. So
it's really all the things.
I had a note on here to say like, do you like it? But I think it's pretty clear we all like it. Yeah. But I want to. So instead of saying do we like it, because we all like it, I want to hear about like Jeff's got some crazy GS stories. Adam's got some good GS stories. I probably have some good GS stories. So let's talk about that. Let's start with Jeff, because Jeff's a storyteller, and we may only have time for Jeff's story, but it'll be a good one.
I'm not sure if that's a dig or not. Well, okay. So there was a time that me and a few guys from the industry, we decided to ride off road from here in Southern California to Cabo San Lucas for New Year's. We left right after Christmas, and we were doing a bunch of miles, almost exclusively off road. And I mean, it was pretty. The days were short. I mean, the riding days were long, but the sunlight was short. So we ended up riding in the dark and doing all this crazy stuff. But at one point, we were riding pretty quickly on this seldomly used dirt road, and I had one guy in front of me. And I came across, and there was this giant washout, and I tried to get across it by just wheeling the front, and I got the front over it, but when the rear hit, it bucked up so hard like it felt like the rear wheel was above my head. Like it was like I was just looking straight down over the handlebars, and somehow I don't know that I even did anything. I didn't crash it, but it did. It completely blew out the shock. It just blew. I was like, oh man, it scared me.
The rear shock.
The rear shock. Yeah, the rear shock, and it just scared me. And you kind of like you have a moment like that. You just sort of like check yourself. You're like, I can't believe I'm still up. Like, I'm still riding upright. And then my foot started slipping on the foot peg. And I'm like, what's going on? And I could see there's this oil everywhere. And I thought something happened to the motor, but it just blew all of the fluid out of the shock onto my side of my pant and the and my boot. And so we managed to get that. The road improved quite a bit after that. It was like the one big moment right there. And we were well down halfway. We were below San Ignacio even. And the thing pumped all of the fluid out of that thing, and I rode it the rest of the week and all the way home on just a spring. There was no dampening. Just springing like this, like even like you're going through the turn and there's semis coming the other way and you're like this, and it was terrifying, but that thing still made it home. That still got me home. Back. And yeah, it turned out when I got back, I had blown up the front shock as well. Got both of them. But wow. I didn't notice anything riding. Well, the rear was so bad. I don't know that I could have noticed what was going on in the front.
Yeah.
But that was
wild.
That was a big scary moment.
Yeah, yeah, and there goes to your point about, all the weight behind you. But at the same time, the thing's pretty well engineered that if you can keep it going straight when you make a mistake, you're going to probably still end up on two wheels. Right?
Yeah.
So,
forgiving bikes.
Very forgiving.
I don't know that I did anything more than just close my eyes and hold on. Yeah. But we're still going forward when all the drama was over.
That's awesome. My GS story, I don't know. I have a bunch of them, but I got to experience the GS trophy, and I think that's an important part to BMW's
the trophy event.
The trophy event, but I think it's an important part of GS-ness is that like BMW has this event for GS owners that they can go and qualify. The top 3 in every country gets to go to a place, and they all get to compete against each other. We're talking like 15 or 20 countries, so 40 to 50 riders all duking it out in a country, and it happens every 2 years. And I got to go as the press guy for the 2022 edition in Albania, and it was really fun. Like seeing all the people that were just there and into being GS owners and trying to ride the GSs as best they could. And the competitions weren't just if you could ride well, but there was teamwork stuff, and there was puzzles, and there was, trivia. There was all these things that, you did at the event, but it was really cool to see all the people. And it was fun to like hang out with 3 American guys that all rode really well. The group that I had in 2022 was a guy named Corey Call, which Adam probably knows. He's a maniac on 2 wheels, and he owned a GS, so he got to go qualify, and he did. And then a guy named Ben, who I think if his GS broke, he could have just carried it on his back. And then a guy named Jim, who was like the never say quit guy. He was smaller than the other 2, but he rode the GS awesome. And he, if anything, challenged his ability with his, his inseam or his ability in able to muscle the bike around. He still went for it, and he still fought it out. But, talking about Ben, the craziest thing I've ever seen on a GS was a guy that actually wasn't on a GS, but next to it, we were on this big, huge hill climb. It was all rocky and nasty, and there was a ton of people stuck on it. And we get up to catching up to the groups in front of us, and everyone's just laid out on this road. And so everyone's taking their turns, like helping pushing bikes. And there was a couple female teams as well. And this lady, she gets this one section and she falls over, and so everyone picks her up and they start to push her, and she catches another rock and it folds her front. She falls over again, and this guy from South Africa, he was a big, strong guy. No one else helped him. I saw this dude grab the bike by like the subframe and the forks, and he lifted the bike up and set it on its tires by himself. Air underneath both tires by himself. Just went
He-Man.
And I was like, that's the most insane thing I've ever seen. And I think
was he a competitor or?
Yeah, he was a competitor, and I think South Africa won that year. And I put it down to that those 3 South African guys were massive humans that were able to do things that no one else could do just because of their strength. But it was the craziest thing I've ever seen, is someone picking up a 550-pound motorcycle by themselves, Scott Summers style.
Wow.
And setting it back on its tires and then going, here, hop on, go ahead.
Maybe even Scott Summers would have been impressed.
Yeah, Scott Summers would have freaked out. So I think I blew a disc out in my back just watching him do it. So we're getting long here. So Adam, do you have a short story?
Yeah, just real quick. Many years ago, during a product evaluation function, we rode the R1250 GS in Carissa Plains, where it was all where the West Coast earthquake divide is in the ground. Yeah. And it had been raining for 24 hours. So we arrived and it's basically just soup. And then I was riding the R1250 GS, and of course I knew we were going there, so I asked for Anarchy Wild, 3070, TKC 80 type tires, but they didn't do that, so they were on street tires. And it was terrifying because I can't tell you how many times I would be riding at 30 miles per hour and I literally fishtail. I would do 180s and 360s, and half the time I wouldn't crash and half the time I would. But eventually, the moral of the story was that even in these sketchy conditions on street tires, for sure I fell down a lot, obviously, because it's slicker than snot. But I still couldn't believe how well balanced that bike was. And some of the obstacles that we went up and over on street tires caked in mud, it literally blew me away how capable that bike is in the most treacherous of terrain with ill fit tires. Just an amazing bike.
Amazing bike. So
nothing will handicap a bike more than tires.
Yeah, and it still wasn't. For sure. Yeah, it was still like not as. I mean, it was bad, but it wasn't like it was still doable. Like your story about going to Mexico and halfway through the fork and the shock, have an issue. That's the mantra of the GS. The GS keeps on going, keeps on trucking. Something doesn't work right, that bike will get you home. That's like a really just well engineered quality bike. If the world ends, you'd want to be on a GS.
Yeah, I think so. I really do think so. So let's go real quick. GS or GSA. We're talking about the 2025 model R1300 GS or GSA. Let's start with Adam. Which one would you rather have, GS or GSA?
I always like the GS more. It's just a little bit skinnier. We were talking about the styling, the new Lego-like styling of the GS Adventure 2025 isn't really my favorite, so I would just stick with the contemporary GS. How about
Jeff,
you guys?
What about you, Jeff?
I'm always GSA. I love that. I love having a little more suspension travel, and then also a bigger fuel tank because, I always say you can't have enough gas unless you're on fire.
Another good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah. So I would, I do like the additional wheel travel of the GSA, but in terms of actual heft and width and weight, I'm going to go with the GS as well. Plus the styling, it has not grown on me, even seeing it up close. It's like they just, you see GSAs usually with saddlebags, and they're like, just make the whole bike look like a saddlebag. Make it look like a top case or a side box. That whole boxy front end thing. I can't get around it. It looks wise. It probably skews my opinion a little bit, but I still like the slimness and the lightness, relative lightness of the GS. So I guess you're overruled, Jeff, on GS or GSA.
That's fine. If we get one in the office and it's a GSA, I'll take it.
That's fine. There is one in the office right now.
Well, I know. I wish I could get my hands on the keys. It seems to be difficult.
Well, just sneak in and get them. So, okay. Well, I think that's going to be it. We got to wrap this thing up. We're going long on time. So, the takeaway from this one: It may be debatable whether or not the R80 GS was the first adventure bike, but BMW no doubt has shaped the adventure bike world more than any other manufacturer has. It's undeniable. They're 45 years. They've innovated and they've driven the segment almost the entire time. If I told you draw an adventure bike, you would end up probably drawing something that looked like a GS. So it's the king because it does it all well. If you were to have just one, as Adam said, it's going to be the GS. And that's the short of it. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for the support. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think about the GS. And again, give us some suggestions on iconic bikes we should be talking about in the Motorcyclist Podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.